FM, How Community Radio.
Welcome back to part 2 of our interview with Scottish songwriter Kim Edgar and chatting about her excellent new album Consequences. I met Kim in a busy and noisy cafe in Leith ahead of the album's release on Friday the 3rd of February. The concept of Consequences was to write one song every month over a year, and in collaboration with a roster of fellow songwriters that Kim had worked with and admired from afar. The result is a very special, atmospheric and courageous collection of songs. In part 2 of this interview, we delve deeper into Kim's creative songwriting process and some of the logistics of delivering under such a tight deadline with busy musicians scattered across the globe. Process of going, right, there's 10 songs going on the album, yes. Or 11 songs, 12 songs, but I've got 15.
Yes, definitely. So that's another really good question, and for me, again, another really joyful thing about this project is it was different from the usual format. That it's not that anybody's made the format, but the format I've made for myself historically. So usually I make an album every 4 years. That's because it takes me 4 years to save up the money to pay for the album. Yeah. So that's my that's been my previous model, and therefore I suppose I feel 4 years of pressure, as in this is it, you've got to record it now and that's going to be it. And so in many ways I would do a ton of preparation before the recording itself would happen, and it usually would be that the case that I have slightly more songs than I need for the album, and I probably would record them all and there'll be some kind of thinning down or picking off the best at the end. But more for me, the thing that's different is the time scale of making an album. Normally, due to the cost of hiring a studio, usually the actual recording process would take place over a week or maybe 2 weeks maximum, and I'd have everything highly arranged and kind of pinned down as to how it's going to be, so all the parts written for all the arrangements.
Save money. Yeah.
Save time, save money, but also I think that was about my own nerves about what if something doesn't. I'm not a very spontaneous person, or I wouldn't trust myself to be spontaneous. I wouldn't be confident in the moment to come up with something. When I previously have been recording albums, I would really highly arrange everything in advance and write all the parts out for the musicians, just to be sure that we had something to work from, because I would be doubting my own ability to come up with anything spontaneously or in the moment. Having said that, over recent years I've been working with a jazz musician called Mikey Hours, and for the first time I worked with him, I wrote him out parts. The second time, he came up with a few stunning ideas himself in lockdown. For Held, he worked completely remotely and came up with stuff that blew my mind in terms of brass arrangements for songs. And so there's been a kind of progression, I think, over time, and maybe especially because of the pandemic. But with this project, it was very open, and I was literally writing my own piano arrangements as we recorded, which I've never done in my life before, and which is hilariously difficult now that I'm preparing for the album launch, because I'm like, what did I play? But there was a much freer approach to the music, and for all of the musicians involved, it was much more of an organic process in the recording. Nothing was preset. We were working out the structure of songs and what lines we might take and all of that stuff in the moment at the time. And equally, that whole process was spread over a year, so it was actually a great privilege to have the time to work on one track a month, because that meant a day put aside just to work on one track, where normally in a studio context you might be trying to record a lot of tracks within a day, or maybe a lot of parts within a day, and then moving on to a different instrument the following day. So totally different.
So the technology allows us to kind of record quite a lot of stuff at home, because Pro Tools and whatever package you're using to do all that, you can get the parts down.
Yes.
And I'm presuming the backing vocals or the shared vocals that you did, they just sent vocal tracks to you. Yeah. It's
been quite varied again. I'm very lucky that Creative Scotland provided funding support for this project, as did individuals through a sort of crowdfunding thing, and because of that funding I was able to get technology for my house to make things possible. So for example, I got these beautiful piano samples which I now have and can use, and I bought Logic, which is a sort of recording software years and years ago. I think it was Logic, just called the very beginning, and now I've got like Logic Pro X, which is the modern version, and now compatible with kind of compatible with my new computers rather than my old computers, and a lovely microphone. So actually, when you're talking about backing vocals, after recording the Rolling Sea, one of the tracks on the album, later I had ideas about gang, sort of layered kind of gang vocals, and I was able to just record them in my bedroom and send them in, and they got added into the mix. And that sort of thing would never have happened on a standard recording project, because the day would have been past already, and the possibility of recording that would have been gone. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of people recording, like Sandra Couteur recorded in Canada with an engineer there, and then sent in her vocal track. We had Dan Bettridge recording his electric guitar and his vocal down in Wales. So people were literally recording from home, and their own technologies as well as the new technology that I had meant that everything could get put together. I have to give huge kudos to Matty Folds, who produced the album, though, and gathered this varied and so coming from everywhere.
I was going to ask
and brought
about
it all together.
So you had a producer, you had someone who was mastering and putting it all together.
And that's, I've worked with Matty for years and years, and he's not only my favourite drummer, but he's very patient with me, which is also a good thing to have in a working relationship. This was an unwieldy kind of sized project, I suppose, in the sense of what we were doing every month, and he rose to the challenge.
So did you kind of finish it as good as you can at the end of each month then, or?
We did, so we basically
so it was in the can.
Everything was in the can monthly, so the commitment was kind of that by the end of every calendar month I would share a recorded version of the song that had been written. So that was the kind of monthly timetable, and actually I thought that was it seemed quite a reasonable and achievable timetable given the pandemic. And in fact, lots of I think almost everyone in the project got COVID at one point, and we had to work around a lot of like vocalists not being able to sing, and so there was actually, surprisingly, because looking at it from a distance, I thought, that's loads of time. No matter what happens, within a month we'll surely be able to pull it all off. But actually there was a few tight moments when we were really working right to the deadline to get the songs out at the end of the month, but we did. And yes, there was an additional bit of Matty had said at the beginning of the project, obviously due to the nature of what we're doing, every track's going to have its own unique sound, but we'll do as much as we can to keep the palette similar and to try and make sure it sounds unified. And I'm really pleased one reviewer actually mentioned that, how unified the whole album sounds, and Matty did do some additional mastering at the end, but each track was mixed and mastered on a monthly basis, so that's a whole ton of work that Matty's taken on for the project, which is incredible.
The town, people packed in airless rooms. Something crashes, heads stay down. Far away, a poppy blooms. Far away, a poppy.
A number. How many people were involved in the project? Counting them all up.
I
probably have. Liner notes.
Yes, I think I have. So obviously the 12 collaborators who were involved, and then the core, what I would call creative team, which obviously included Matty on the drums, Kevin Maguire on the bass, Mikey Hours on brass. That was making the sounds kind of thing, along with the collaborators, and then Gillian Gamble, who's now, her surname's changed during the project, Gillian Ailey O'Mara, made the artwork for the cover, and she's also made the artwork for a single which is getting released on the 13th of January called It Only Takes a Silence. That was my collaboration with Piirainen, who's from Finland. It just happened we were writing the song on the day that Russia invaded Ukraine, so we're doing a charity single to raise money for children from Ukraine through UNICEF. So Gillian got involved with artwork for the album, and then there's a filmmaker, Louise Mather, who made a music video for myself and Horse for our Save Myself Run Away. Yep.
The MG sports car.
And then a designer called Eva Giovannini, who's based in Germany, and she did all the artwork design. So that's quite a lot of people. Can't add up the numbers. But
I know, and it looks fantastic, doesn't it? I mean, it's really.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm really pleased with
stuff.
It's lovely to work with. I had worked with all of the people in the kind of creative team before, so although all of the collaborations were people I'd never written songs with before, I also had this sort of security of knowing I was working with people in the core team who I know we work really well together, and I really trust them, and I love their creativity and their magic. So that was a great start.
You did English lit, didn't you?
I did. Yes.
So
yeah.
how when you're forming some, so if you like poetry does this magnificent, poets do this wonderful thing where they have a kind of core of an idea, but then look at it, different things. Is that how you kind of start trying to weave together?
To be honest, I've always followed Michael Mara. Was a very generous songwriter in workshops, and I went to one of his songwriting workshops, and one of the things that really stuck with me was he said, if you don't have a big idea, don't bother writing a song. So I think for me the main thing is just making sure it's something I really am passionate about and want to communicate before I start writing. And if I have nothing to say, I don't need to say anything. So for me that's probably the main thing. But the way I have tended to work is kind of maybe filmic in a sense. It's like thinking about the whole thing and then thinking about how it might, or a story, how it might break down into parts, and then coming into the detail. I never usually start with like line one lyric or anything. It tends to be for me a kind of big idea, and then coming in a wee bit structurally. Like my mum and dad built houses when I was wee, and I often think about songs like constructions, and also thinking like, what kind of song am I trying to make? I do like kind of like a well-structured song, and I love some songwriters who are very different from that. I kind of think I maybe write like houses with rooms, if you know what I mean, corridors and things, and sometimes a song is a bit more like a kind of wispy tent that floats about, and that can create a certain feeling, but for me that's not always the most satisfying for my own writing. So usually I do have a sense of where I'm trying to go, but the like what I would call the interior decoration or whatever at the end, that's actually the particular words, and sometimes it takes me a long time to find exactly the word I'm trying to get to express the big idea. So that takes a while, but usually it is a wee bit like the wood you were talking about finding the sculpture inside the piece of wood, just chiseling away.
Fascinating thing about what word works and changing words, and that's why God invented the thesaurus.
Oh, I love a thesaurus.
Of course we all do. I read that you'd spent a year at Liverpool School of Performing Arts.
Yes.
I think which was a Paul McCartney thing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that I heard Paul McCartney talking about songwriting where he's a bit of a title guy. So if you find like Yesterday, then he kind of constructs a narrative around.
Yes.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
I think that's a great approach, and actually when I'm delivering songwriting workshops, straight after I talk about Michael Mara's big idea, I talk about song titles, and I think that's a really good way in. So I'm totally with Paul McCartney on that one. I think I know you can have sort of quite obscure titles that don't relate to the song in an obvious way, but for me usually the title would be something that draws me in and also explains the whole big idea behind the song. So sometimes just finding that one thing can be enough. Also can lead on to your chorus very easily. So that's also a great thing. Actually, Hewerdine, again, Boo and Finlay Napier ran an online songwriting workshop in 2021 that I was lucky enough to get a place on as a musician in Scotland who didn't have any other work at that time, sort of thing, called Bird on a Wire. And that was one of the tasks in that songwriting week, was to write a song where the chorus would only be the title. So one word chorus, I think my song that week was Kingfisher, collaborated with another songwriter on, and the chorus went Kingfisher, Kingfisher. There we are. So, again, economy is really
cool.
good. Yeah.
Absolutely. How did you choose the people to collaborate with?
Well, I did have some sort of criteria at the beginning, and it was songwriters that I admired and with whom I had never written a song before. So just going back to the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts, when I was studying there, that was in 2000, I think, 2001 to 2002, I think it was. I'm not very good with time. Anyway, in my class, it was a class of 35 people. It was an international course, and I met some amazing people, including Stone, who is a Taiwanese musician and composer. He's in a massive band over there called Mayday. Now, when it was the first week of the class, everyone was asked to bring in like any songs they'd written, and at this point I had like something on a cassette that I'd recorded in my bedroom. You know, that was the level most of us in the class were at. And Stone brought in 3 multi-platinum albums. But you would never have known because he was so quiet and humble and generous. But basically, like in a kind of equivalent to take that band over there. And he's one of the collaborators on this album. So again, I've not really seen Stone maybe a handful of times. He invited me over to his wedding straight after the course, and he taught me a song in Mandarin that I sang at his wedding, and I sang a traditional Scots song at his wedding as well. And then I visited him a couple of times, like when he played Wembley.
As you do, yeah.
You know, but I've not seen him that much. And then we were able to spend tons of time chatting together, talking ideas, and then writing a song together. And we're going to also make a music video together soon in the coming months. So that's been amazing. So it could range from that. Like, so I met him 20 years ago, but I've never written with him.
Kim,
he was the first person. He was the first person who recorded anything I had written. He had tiny gadget, back then when nobody had gadgets, and helped me record my first EP. He was just such a lovely human. But other people, so for example, Louis Abbott from Admiral Fallow and Goodnight Louisa are both people I've worked with through a charity called Vox Liminis. It's based in Glasgow, and they do lots of creative work in the criminal justice area, and it's can be work in prisons. So I've done work, so for example, family singing in prisons with prisoners and their partners and children to try and keep families together. It can be songwriting with prisoners. It can be work in the community to help integrate people into the community. Tons of different projects. But anyway, Louis, I hugely admire. I've loved hearing Admiral Fallow at many festivals, and I've never written with him, though I've worked with him to write songs with others on many occasions. And the same with Goodnight Louisa. I met her during the pandemic, delivering a workshop for Vox Liminis for young people who were at risk of offending in Edinburgh. So it really was simple criteria. Just I admired these people's work. I had never written with them before, and I was quite ambitious as well. For example, contacting Ron Sexsmith and people I put on a pedestal, as well as people who maybe I had a relationship with and had worked alongside, but just had never had the chance to collaborate with.
Did anyone say no?
Yes.
We don't need to know.
No, I can tell you. Okay. I don't mind telling you.
Okay.
Anais Mitchell said no. Not directly no, but her management said no. So I had contacted Anais Mitchell, who her album Young Man in America is probably the album I have listened to the most in the last 5 years. At one point, almost every day in life. I really think she's an amazing songwriter. And I had contacted her management to see if she would be up for collaborating, and they said unfortunately no, she wouldn't be able to commit to that. So that was I was sad about that. I have to say, however, I couldn't be more happy with the people I have collaborated with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was good to know. Sorry, I had to ask. Just in case.
Good question.
People formed an opinion that is incredibly fortuitous that everyone you asked went, yes. I'm available tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, Tori Amos I would absolutely love to collaborate, but I just didn't think that's ever going to happen, so I didn't even ask.
Well, let's just leave that out there, Tori, if you're listening. Absolutely. Indeed. Really exciting. You've now got to get all this into the live launch.
Yes.
As part of Celtic Connection. Yeah. So how's the planning? And you've got people coming in from all over.
Yeah, so Sandra Couteur is flying in from Canada, and Aoife is coming over from Finland. Dan's coming up from Wales, and then we've got lots of Scottish-based collaborators as well. So James Grant will be joining us, Horse. Goodnight Louisa, Louis Abbott, Hewerdine. So that's I think that's 8 of the collaborators out of 12 are able to make it, which is amazing. It's quite a lot of planning and quite a lot of logistics, and I think we're almost through all the logistics now. So now I'm finalising the sort of musical arrangements at the moment.
So you're working with the band too?
Yeah. So the band, the core band, and I will have a rehearsal as soon as I come back from my tour in Germany.
You're touring.
Yeah. So when I come home, we'll rehearse for a day together and hopefully prepare most of the music. Yeah. And then the day before the concert, all the collaborators are arriving in Glasgow, and then we'll have a day in a rehearsal studio there as well with the band. Wow. So things that are fun for me still to do are like work out an appropriate schedule for the rehearsals to try and make sure we don't miss anything or run out of time. And I'm just finalising the way that I'm kind of visualising the show is it's a full show, so it's got two halves, and I'm just going to work through the album in order because it seems to make the most sense, because that's how the album developed over time. And then also I'm showcasing why I chose those songwriters by showcasing some of their work or the reason for the connection between me and them. So it's going to be a really varied show in that respect, and there's just a couple more songs to finalise, and then we've almost got the set list written. So and then I'm busying myself making music charts for everybody. So what's really nice is some collaborators will help to do all the things that we physically can't do, like me singing 5 vocals won't happen, but it's lovely that many of the collaborators are willing to step in. So there'll be a lot of that to do, and that's going to be loads of fun. And I don't think I've ever performed with so many people before, so
big cast.
It is. It's going to be lots of fun. Small stage, lots of people.
Lots of sandwiches backstage. That's great. Good stuff. Fantastic. And that takes place on Thursday the 2nd of February at St Luke's, and that's part of Celtic Connections, so the tickets are available on the Celtic Connections website or through their box office. And it'd just be amazing if it was full. I'd love that because everyone's coming from so far. I'm very much looking forward to it. Fantastic. Well, we'll do our bit to try and spread the word as much as we can about that. The other thing that I've noted, very similar to you, even our little beginning baby steps into podcasting, is people popping up in all nooks and crannies across the world to tune in to different things, which is quite incredible. Listen, I wanted to just briefly talk to you about your community music thing, because I know that you're involved with the Mind Choir.
Freedom of Mind Community Choir has been is just a delight actually to be part of. So I'm one of 2 music directors for the choir. I'm very lucky that I share that with Mary at Dallas, so when I'm away on tour she's able to kind of keep everything going, but also on a weekly basis we're kind of both there and working with the choir, which is lovely. It's a choir that grew out of a mental health charity originally, Falkirk District Association for Mental Health, but in 2019 we became an independent community choir. The charity itself was moving away from weekly group sessions, but at that point when we consulted with the choir members, 100% of the members of the choir wanted the choir to continue, so we took the leap and kind of just went for becoming an independent group, and we've kind of formalised ourselves over the past year. We're now an unincorporated association, so we've got a committee and all things. We're getting quite organised, and the whole point of the group really is we sing to feel good. So it's a non-audition choir. It takes place on Wednesday afternoons in Falkirk, and it's a pay what you can afford kind of thing. So it goes from £2 to £5 a session, or you can do a monthly subscription. We have some resources online for our members, but the main thing is now that the restrictions are lifted, we're meeting on a weekly basis, and we love to perform care homes, hospitals, concert halls, any opportunity. The choir are so enthusiastic and so keen to get out there and spread a little bit of joy, so it's a great fun thing to do.
And one of the things that of course is at the core of our charity was building social connections, but particularly through the arts and creativity. And the science says singing is just good for you, whether you do it in the shower or the bath, or while you're doing the garden.
Absolutely. I mean, it's physically,
but together.
Singing together is even better.
Powerful thing that comes together. Isn't it?
I mean, there's evidence from research about it not only makes you look more beautiful by tightening all the muscles in your face, helps you live longer by improving lung capacity and lots of other things, but the buzz of group singing and the sense of belonging that breathing and singing together in time gives to people, it has been proven that people who singing choirs live longer. So that's just
there you go.
Fundamentally, it's
Absolutely.
good for you.
Slam dunk. So listen, Kim, thank you for spending this time with us.
Likewise, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I appreciate
enjoyed
it.
learning about the process and what an amazing project. I've listened to 2 or 3 the songs now on my playlist at home, and it sounded amazing.
Thanks so much.
Sounds really, really good. And good luck with the launch.
Thank you.
And thanks again. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
In part 2 of this podcast, you've been listening to the wonderfully talented Kim Edgar chatting to me about her new album Consequences. We've been tempting you with a soupçon of tracks ahead of the official release on Friday the 3rd of February, and teasing your musical taste buds with songs called Whisper Pink in collaboration with Louis Abbott from Glasgow band Admiral Fallow, and also the magnificent Horse McDonald on a track called Save Myself. Over the next few weeks, we will upload the entire back catalogue of Backdyke Blether podcasts, which of course went out live during our Haver FM How Community Radio project back in May 2022. Coming soon will be remixed versions of interviews with singer-songwriter Bruce Davis, businesswoman Jackie Lowe, advertising guru Jerry Farrell, author Helene Kest, managing director of Advanced Northumberland Ken Dunbar, and the Celtic classical musician, composer Faye McGow. Please keep subscribing to our YouTube channel and catch up on the launch of our new podcast club, our regular community podcasts, and all the latest Heids and Herts events. And finally, details and links of how to purchase or pre-order a copy of Kim's album are available on kimedgar.bandcamp.com, and tickets for the launch concert at Celtic Connections on Thursday 2nd February at the Winged Ox in Glasgow are available at celticconnections.com and on Kim's own website, kimedgar.com.
Your dedicated Havering station. 87.9 Haver FM. Haver FM, How Community Radio, is supported by the Fife Communities Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund through Fife Voluntary Action and the Scottish Government.